SC20 is bringing the HPC community together in a global online event that includes students from all over the planet. Hello, I'm Charla Bocchicchio, and in this interview, we'll focus on one of the SC20's most intense student events, the Virtual Student Cluster Competition. Now, before we get to the details, would each of you please introduce yourselves, where you work, and how you're involved with SC20? We'll start with Scott.
Hi, I'm Scott Michael. I work at Indiana University, and together with Veronica, I'm one of the co-chairs of the virtual SCC this year.
Great. Andy?
Hi, I'm Andy Howard. I work for the Microsoft Azure Hpc team as a program manager, and I'm helping basically run all the cloud component for this.
Excellent.
Hi, my name is Veronica Melesse Vergara. I work at Oak Ridge National Lab, and currently, as Scott mentioned, I'm the co-chair for Virtual Student Cluster Competition.
Hi, I'm Steve Leake. I'm part of the user engagement group at NERSC, and I've been particularly focusing on the webinars and preparation of the students for the competition.
Hi, I'm Stephen Harrell. I work in the HPC Performance and Architectures group at Texas Advanced Computing Center, and I am the chair for the Reproducibility Challenge this year.
Hi, my name is Abhinav Thota. I work for Indiana University. I am the applications lead for the Virtual Student Cluster Competition.
Excellent. Well, we're glad to have you all here. Thanks for being with us. So what is the SC20 Virtual Student Cluster Competition, and why is it important to the HPC community? I'm not sure who wants to take the lead on this one. Maybe we can hear a little bit from several of you. What is the competition?
Well, in the past, the competition has been a 48-hour competition among teams who all build a cluster on the show floor and run a series of applications to see who can get the best performance and do the most with their machine, all capped by a certain power threshold. Unfortunately, we couldn't do that this year, so we had to make some changes. So we decided to go completely virtual, which is why we are relying heavily upon Andy and his team this year. So everyone is competing in the cloud this year.
Gotcha. So along with that, these changes, are there any major obstacles or challenges that you've noticed planning this virtual event this year? Anybody want to chime in? Feel free.
I think one of the biggest challenges has just been the timing. Usually, our planning for this starts in January, February, and obviously we had to make some later changes about halfway through the planning period. So just, kind of everybody stepped up and got things changed over. We had to make some significant rule changes and that sort of thing.
Well, it's all, that's what 2020 has taught us, right?
Yeah, and honestly, that practical experience for the teams has also been very relevant. And this is the same problem that most of the HPC community is facing right now: is how do we handle keeping the lights on?
Absolutely. So I hear that the competitions can be pretty high pressure in the past when they're in person. How do you anticipate that this is changing this year? Is there still that sense of being in a pressure cooker? Anyone?
So this year, the timing of the competition is extended a little bit, partly because of the differences in time zones to make things a little bit fairer, and also partly because you're working virtually over Zoom. I think we've all discovered this year is a little bit harder and a little bit more friction. And so typically in that pressure cooker environment, the students are literally rubbing shoulders, and they're able to swap ideas and ask questions really quickly and interactively face to face. And I think that the virtual aspect will make that a little bit more challenging this year. So I think it will be a different kind of pressure, but it will still be a pressure cooker environment.
And perhaps it's just not that everyone else can see the pressure cooker happening this time, right? It's all happening on the individual Zoom meetings.
Yeah, and I think one thing that we tried to do this year, because when the competition is in person, teams are just a stone's throw away from all the other teams and can see how the other teams are doing and what's going on, and a team is stressed out or needs help or is doing great. So that's sort of the what we're trying to facilitate through the public leaderboard, so that teams can get a sense of what other teams are doing, how things are going, and really get a gauge of what the other teams are up to.
So why is this competition important for the HPC community, for the global HPC community?
I'm happy to chime in. One of the reasons that the competition exposes the students to the high-performance computing world, you usually don't get that experience maybe in your classroom necessarily. And the competition was one way that we could get the students to learn all the pieces of HPC, from like managing a cluster, setting it up, installing the software, running scientific code, so they get a taste of all the different areas that people can actually work in the HPC field, and hopefully bring them to stay in the HPC field and continue their careers.
Excellent. And how many students participate?
This year we have 19 teams, and each team has 6 students. So we have quite a few students participating remotely.
Excellent. We already touched on this a little bit. The pandemic obviously has forced us to think and act in new ways. Anything else you've learned from planning this unusual event this year, based on the pandemic and the challenges that you've had? Anything in addition to what you already spoke about?
So I think something interesting that's been happening in HPC and the conditions of the pandemic have pushed it to the fore is the idea of HPC in the cloud, and it's kind of rapidly moving from a fairly niche thing to a much more mainstream thing. And there's a lot of interesting potential and growing capabilities here. For instance, there's a much lower barrier to entry for new organizations. And by making that really central to the competition this year, the students are getting some really good and relatively kind of early in the big picture experience on how to do everything for HPC in the cloud. And I think that will both serve them in good stead and also be a little bit of a showcase for new capabilities that are being developed in HPC. Excellent.
So I'm curious, how does the student cluster competition prepare these students for the real world in HPC? Any thoughts on that?
I mean, I think we've seen that there's a lot of challenges this year, especially. Everyone has had to be incredibly flexible and pivot from one plan to another. That's something we're all experiencing now in this particular time, but happens on a consistent basis, in HPC, where plans are changing and things have to move quickly to adapt to a changing environment.
Yeah, getting up to speed suddenly with short notice on whole new technologies or scientific fields is par for the course in HPC. And this is a great experience for the students in living that.
Yeah, and along that same vein, especially when you start talking about an HPC cloud migration, that's not something that happens overnight. It's not something that happens for free. It takes investment of resources to prepare for that, and sometimes you end up running up against your budget, and that's the fact of life.
Yeah, and I think along the lines of logistical concerns, there's a lot of logistical concerns that the teams run into. This year they don't have hardware, but many times, hardware has been delayed or not, or possibly not released or whatever. And that's exactly the same problems that we have as HPC professionals. The competition in many ways, both logistically and HPC wise, is a microcosm of an HPC center, and I think that's but both a source of stress for students, but also a strength of the competition as a whole.
Right.
Yeah, and I think even in, like usually in the physical competition, there will be a power outage that they don't know when it will happen, but they'll have to recover from. So we like kind of inject a scenario that will cause a failure that they'll have to learn how to recover from. And this year we can't do that, but the students already have had other kinds of challenges to deal with. One of the teams during training did not have power because they were in the storm path in North Carolina, so they weren't able to actually do their training exercises. So all those kind of things, they have to adapt and try to figure out, okay, if I can't do that, when do I do it? Maybe we can do this this time, and kind of reshuffle their plans real time.
Right.
Yeah, I assume that there is some sort of work distribution inside the teams where one person is the sysadmin, the other person is the HPL expert, another person is an application expert, and it brings you the dynamic of user support, sysadmin, and the actual user. So if they go through this process, it'll give them some insight and experience that they might find useful if and when they become actual HPC users or HPC support people down the road. Yeah, I think that'll give them
excellent, and
that should give them a nice insight.
It sounds like it's been designed that way, the competition, but also in a very practical sense, it's working. So that's a great testament to the competition. How can the SC20 participants get the most out of this year's competition? Any advice you'd give to them to really make the most of it for themselves?
We have a lot of ways that we're trying to engage the student teams with the broader conference. So a few things that the students have done is to create a poster for each of their teams that will be posted in our Cadmium CD channel that people can come by and look at each one of those posters for the 19 teams. We also asked them to give a brief lightning talk about their experience in the competition, which is sort of to replace the in-person interactions that people might be able to have on the show floor. And we're this year going to be posting a live leaderboard so that people can sort of follow along with the competition and see how teams are doing in terms of submitting their results and getting scores.
Excellent.
And also, I think by conducting the competition before the actual conference starts, the competition ends before the conference starts. I think we are making it possible for the students to completely take part in the conference, attend sessions, go to the technical program and whatnot. Whereas they could have done some of those things, engage in other things, where if the competition was on location in person during the conference, but now that it's all virtual, by separating these two things, I think we are giving them an opportunity to take advantage of all the competition activities.
That sounds like a really good change. Yeah. I'm wondering, looking ahead at next year, what changes do you anticipate for next year's conference with the competition? You think that maybe some of these changes are going to become permanent?
I think so. The student cluster competition has been doing a cloud component for several years now, but this is the first year that we've gone completely virtual. Okay. And I think the students have really learned a lot of new things about the cloud where they may have not paid as much focused attention when they had to also worry about their own cluster. So I think that's been a good thing, and I really hope that SC21 can sort of capitalize on that momentum to encourage students to get some more experience with this type of technology.
Right. Any advice to prospective student participants for next year's competition?
I mean, just to kind of add to what Scott was saying, I think that the cloud component, some teams have capitalized on it in the past and really seen how the flexibility of having the cloud component can help you in both the preparation and then also during the competition itself. But I think other teams have been pretty quick to dismiss some of the capabilities there. So I definitely encourage any teams to look at how they can basically maximize, not only with cloud resources, but just maximize the preparation that you have before the competition.
Right, gotcha. any well, who would you want to thank for making this year's conference possible, if anybody?
There's so many people to thank. Obviously, all of the people on this call have put in a ton of work. The people working on the committee have done just a tremendous amount of work to put the competition together. I think this is one of the most logistically challenging and biggest volunteer projects I've ever worked on in such a short period of time. I think also Microsoft has been a great supporter of the competition for many years, and they really stepped up. Andy and his team really delivered a great resource for us, and the committee in general has been, the SC committee more widely, has been very supportive of this pivot to a virtual competition. So that's all been great.
Excellent.
And of course, all the teams, having them actually come in, participate, and they've been working very hard. We were surprised to get as much interest and enthusiasm from all of the teams who applied this year, given the circumstances throughout the world.
Right. Anyone else want to add to that list?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, definitely the students, because we had to change things to the actual, they had already submitted their applications for the normal competition and all that, and we had to change it up in the middle of the whole process. And they've been great. They ask questions, they let us know if they don't understand something. So it's been really nice to have also their understanding that things are in flux, and we're kind of coming up with a new version of the challenge. So their understanding and their resilience has been really great to see.
Excellent. Anyone else? I'm curious, just on an anecdotal, personal level, what are some of your first experiences with the SC conferences? Any little stories you'd like to tell about any first experiences for you, or not first experiences? Anything that's really been impactful for you with SC conferences?
For me, I was a student volunteer in my first SC conference. I came in 2010 as a student when I was in grad school, and it basically changed my whole career path. I was going to maybe just try to find a job in industry and see what I do with my computational science degree, but I didn't know that there was a whole world of HPC careers. So I ended up moving to the technical side and working with the system side and helping out scientists run on these big, large-scale systems. And I wouldn't have known that was an option had I not gone to SC now 10 years ago. And yeah, it was a great experience for me.
Excellent. Anyone else? Stephen, we haven't heard from you yet. Go ahead, Abhinav. Go ahead.
Okay. No, I was going to say I second everything that Veronica said. I was also at SC10 in New Orleans for the first time as a student volunteer. So yeah, that's interesting. It's the same story.
Yeah, great. Anyone else?
Yeah, I actually was the Purdue team advisor at SC10, which was my first SC, and I did that for a few more years after that. And that was such a rewarding experience. I worked to plan this over time. So I think the SCC is well, anecdotally, all the teams that I've ever worked with, have at least some students that are working in HPC today at national labs, at academic institutions. So I think from my point of view, I've seen the full ecosystem, and I think it's a really great program.
Excellent.
Yeah, I actually competed the first 3 years that the competition was happening. So that's been a big motivator for me to stay involved with it, because it's definitely similar to Veronica and Abhinav. It definitely helped shape my career.
Great. Steve or Scott?
So from a HPC point of view, looking the other direction, I think the SCC is also it's a fantastic way to tap into this great new resource of new undergraduates, and especially with undergraduates, you get such a diverse field of people who are interested and talented, who can really add to the whole field over over coming years. So I think this is a great source for us to, to tap and to foster.
All right, well, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Charla Bocchicchio, inviting you to watch again soon for more about this year's conference from the SC20 News Desk.